Eschatology is important and stuff, but it's not the end of the world. Hey guys, welcome back to Kingdom Craft, where I build a big church in Minecraft as I talk about theology and other stuff. And I'm right now doing a set of episodes on what Presbyterians believe, and today I'm talking about eschatology. Okay, this is the real church, and I'm gonna do that while I build, the chairs, the pews and stuff in this church. So, eschatology, some of you may know a lot about it, some of you may know nothing about it. It's really not something that Christians who are just starting out either know about, or if they do know about it, they don't form opinions on it until later. So eschatology literally means the study of last things. It has to do with what we think the end of the world will be like. So at first it seems like this is not even an issue that's worth talking about, because we're like, didn't Jesus say nobody knows when the end will come? And that's true, he did say that. So that's the end of this video, bye. No. It's true, we don't know exactly when the end will come. But there have been debates over what the second coming of Jesus, or when that will be, in relation to other things that the Bible talks about. So specifically, the book of Revelation, the last book of Bible, talks about some 1,000-year reign of Christ. The verse, I'll put it on the screen, it's like, they came to life and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. So what does that mean exactly? And when exactly is that 1,000 years, and when is Christ's second coming in relation to that 1,000 years? So what all historic Christians agree on is that Jesus is coming again. Jesus will indeed return. And what we also all agree on, of course, is that the book of Revelation is inspired, and that 1,000 years means something, but we don't know what the 1,000 years is exactly, and we don't know where the second coming of Christ falls on the timeline. So, generally there are three different interpretations. The first one, they're not in any order. The first one I'm going to tell you about is premillennialism. They think that the second coming of Christ will be premillennial, before the millennium. And of course, the second coming hasn't happened yet, so that means the millennium, the millennial reign of Christ, is something far in the future, according to premillennials. Or not, maybe in the near future, but it won't happen at all until Jesus comes back. So, basically, the point is, the millennium is not now, and it won't come at all until Jesus comes back. That is premillennialism. Postmillennialism is that Jesus will come back post-millennium, after the millennium, which means that the millennium will be before Jesus comes back, and they define the millennium as not a literal reign of Christ on Earth, but, it is sort of literal, but a literal reign of Christianity on Earth. So they see it as a 1,000-year golden age that will happen before Christ comes, when basically the Christianity rules the world, and of course it'll make the world better. And they think it's our job to usher in the millennium by spreading Christianity and making the world a better place. And they think it will succeed. So of course post-millennials have a very optimistic view of the future. And lastly, and this is the Presbyterian belief, Reformed Presbyterian, and it's really not just Presbyterian, all historic Christians have really agreed with this. I don't want to say all historic Christians, all the historic Christian traditions, have generally agreed with this. So that means Catholicism, that means Lutheranism, that means Eastern Orthodoxy. So yeah, this has been the majority view in church history. It's amillennialism. So I guess you could say amillennialism is a form of postmillennialism, because we believe that Jesus will come back after the millennium. But the millennium is not a literal 1,000 years. It's a metaphor for the reign of the church between Jesus' first coming and his second coming. So that means, of course, we are in the millennium, and that's what I believe. I'm a Presbyterian. Now, not all Presbyterians are amillennial, most are, some are post-millennial, they're almost never premillennial. But anyway, I think you're wondering, especially if you're new to this stuff, why does this matter? Isn't this just splitting hairs? And a lot of people have thought that this doesn't matter. Some people label themselves pan-millennial, which means however it pans out, I'm okay with it. So there are a lot of people who are like, this is not a salvation issue, which, yeah, it's not. You're not damned for believing the wrong thing. So why does it even matter? Why should we even bother trying to be right about this? Well, no, it does not affect whether or not you're saved. All real Christians can disagree on this, but it does affect what the church's mission in the world will be like. If you generally, premillennials have a kind of pessimistic view of history, and therefore they have a bit less of a motivation to try and make the world a better place here and now. The mission is just to save souls and go to heaven and just sort of wait until Jesus comes back. That's why more like Baptist dispensational people are often premillennial, because they in their approach to like how they engage with the world, they don't have much of a motivation to transform the world, make it a better place. It's just we have to wait till Jesus comes back, hopefully save some other people along the way, and that's it. Postmillennialism is a lot more optimistic. So when you think of postmillennials, think of the Puritans, and think of certain people within the medieval Catholic Church. Of course, amillennialism was still the majority, but postmillennialism is very optimistic. So they do care about making the world a better place, because they think that by doing so, by spreading the gospel and by engaging with the culture, they can usher in the millennium. But while I do like postmillennialism more than premillennialism, because it does give the church a motivation to really improve the world and be salt and light as Jesus commanded us, it's too optimistic in my opinion, especially the way we've seen Christianity completely decline in the West. I don't have necessarily an optimistic or a pessimistic view of history. Amillennialism sees Christian history as cycles of success and failure, cycles of evangelism and persecution. So, amillennialism, therefore, isn't necessarily optimistic or pessimistic, but because we believe the millennium is now, because we believe the kingdom of God is now, it's Kingdom Craft, so of course I believe the kingdom of God is now, it's still our job to spread God's kingdom, even if it won't always be successful, and it's still always our job to have a positive impact on the world. So, basically, premillennials and postmillennials agree that the millennium is not here yet, and amillennials say it is here. We're in the kingdom of God right now, and it's our job to spread it right now. Amillennials and postmillennials agree that the church's motivation is to do good works, but for a slightly different motivation. For postmillennials, doing good deeds is so we can usher in the millennium. For amillennials, it's more like we're already in the millennium, we're already in the kingdom of God right here and now, so let's expand it. So, therefore, I think amillennialism is really the best of both worlds. It has the same motivation as postmillennialism to really make a better world, but unlike postmillennialism, it's not, I think, foolishly optimistic. I'm not calling postmillennials fools, but I do think that we will be discouraged if we have an optimistic view of the future and then we see Christianity just totally fall apart in the West. And of course, postmillennials are still like, yeah, well, there might be like 10,000 years before the church takes over the world, and that's a reasonable guess. But I think if we look at what history's been like, it really has been like cycles. There really have been different times in different parts of the world where Christianity's done great and where it's done not so great. So that's why I think amillennialism is the best eschatological view. So, the Westminster Confession of Faith, which is the primary confession for Presbyterians specifically, does basically go against premillennialism, because it says the second coming of Christ and like the final judgment are basically the same event. There's not going to be a 1,000 years in between. And also the Heidelberg Catechism, which isn't specifically a Presbyterian confession, but it's a Reformed confession, condemns postmillennialism. It calls it, like, I know this is not very politically correct, it calls it certain Jewish fables, which, and by that they're referring to the idea that there will be like 1,000-year golden age here on Earth. The reason they call it that is because there are a lot of Jewish people who believe that to prepare for the coming of the Messiah, we need to make like a perfect world. And that does explain why Jews are always very active in politics, because part of the Jewish religion has always been make a better world here and now. However, one conservative Jew, Dennis Prager, explains why Jews are, especially secular Jews, are frequently leftist. By the way, I am ethnically Jewish myself, so don't hate me for speaking on this. The reason why a lot of Jews are progressive is because they're taught by Judaism to make a better world. But since a lot of Jews, especially in the West, are not really religious, they're not informed by religion on how to make a better world, so they are informed by progressive ideologies instead. But, so yeah, the Heidelberg Catechism basically calls postmillennialism certain Jewish fables that we reject. Obviously, that's not very nice language. And the Westminster Confession rejects premillennialism because it says, the second coming of Christ and the final judgment are the same event. So that basically leaves amillennialism, which is the historic Reformed position. So, thanks for watching this. Now enjoy this speed up of me mining some stone so I can finish building the walls of my church.